We are on our second video here, the first video for Adoptive Personality. Let's show you the book again, in case you didn't see the first one. I don't have the cover on it. This is my copy to do the final read-through and make sure there's no mistakes before I put it up for sale. This is going to be Chapter 1. Again, this book is rated R, so anyone under 18, please log off the internet and do not listen. This is the opening entry to my story. To those who will read my story, my name is Eve Matthews. My life has been anything but easy. I need to tell you my story for people to understand the woman I will become. My story is not a fairy tale, but nightmares came to life. I will never let anyone read it while I am alive, but after I am gone, everyone will know what I lived through and achieved in my life. Letting people see my graphic past through my eyes will make them understand why I did what I did. Sincerely, Eve Matthews. This is part 1 of my story. So now we're going to get into it. I'm going to read chapter 1 for you. Part 1 is the fire. So I'm going to put up the first 3 chapters. So here you go. Here's your surprise, chapter number 1. I stalked across the living room floor like a tiger. I could feel the heat creeping up into my neck and face. The anger was escalating. The thoughts entering my mind were full of anguish and torture. I paced the floor as my mind raced. Eve, you can't take much more of this. He's taken everything you've ever had and you let him do it. How could you let someone violate you like this and not do anything about it? You've got to stand up for yourself and fight or this will never end. He'll continue to put his greasy, nasty hands all over your body unless you do something. I had to do something about him and fast. I thought about suicide. I thought about it every time my father raped me. I thought about finding a way to hang myself. I even searched the silverware drawer to find a knife sharp enough to end my life. I even knew which way to cut my wrist to ensure that if I attempted it, I would succeed. Then I realized I wasn't the one who needed to die. He was. And that self-righteous woman who calls herself your mother never does anything to stop him. Better you than me, she always says as she watches him beat on you. God damn it, stand up for yourself once in your pathetic life, you coward. I finally came to a halt. I realized I'd been pacing for hours. I figured I might have worn a hole in the carpet or at the very least made a visible imprint of my path. I leaned close, observing the carpet. It had been there as long as I could remember. It wasn't the thin type that made you feel like you were walking on hardwood floors. The unattractive green carpet was thick and fluffy in texture. The material was soft under my feet, and I could feel the thickness through my slippers. A hideous plan was brewing in my head. I wonder if I can get away with it. I have to cover all my bases. I was glaring in the mirror hanging from the wall. It was circular and cracked in the bottom left corner. My forehead was wrinkled as I took in the image of myself. I was 5'6", with a pretty round pudgy face. My cheeks were sun-pinked and my brown hair shoulder length. My hard jawline was clenched. My hollow eyes had an unrecognizable fiery glow as the wheels kept turning. The plan unfolded. I was going to make them pay dearly for the last 5 years of torture I endured at his hands and the living hell I've had to live through most of my life. They wouldn't have a clue. It was going to be priceless. The glow in my hazel eyes burned brighter as I thought about the pain I could inflict on my parents. I made my way to my parents' bedroom, leaning around the doorframe to peek inside. The horrid excuse for a human being was sleeping on his back and snoring. The cover was balled up at his feet and one leg straight, while the other was bent at the knee. He was sleeping in a pair of dingy, soiled boxer shorts. Everything about this man makes me want to gag. The sleeping wench was on her stomach with an arm draped across my father's chest. My mother's hair was knotted and frizzy where she tossed and turned. It looked as if they were happy together when they slept. It sickened me. I realized I no longer feared my father. When I was sure they were sound asleep, I made my way back into the living room. My parents wouldn't be getting up. They were like breathing corpses once they fell asleep. The details began to piece together. I took an inventory of all the objects in the room. They were important to my plan. I checked the house for smoke detectors. There were only 2 ways into the house, the front door and the back. I walked back to the living room and stood in the doorway. Not one room in the house spoke of money. There was a fluffy green couch we had for so long the green fabric was worn in spots. When you sat in a corner, a spring poked you. There was a flower print chair and pillows that matched, but had runs in the fabric. The furniture obviously hadn't been bought as a set. An 18-inch TV sat on a small black stand. A distressed curio stood against one of the walls filled with fake Beanie Babies. Two old, decayed nightstands held lamps that wouldn't get a second glance by anyone visiting. Electric activity surged as I remained still and processed everything, thanking God for my eidetic memory. I was deep in concentration as I absorbed every detail in the entire room, memorizing every piece of furniture from one side to the other. This plan had to be perfect, or I would certainly live to regret it. But if I was successful, as old as I get, it will be a memory no one can ever take away from me. I concentrated my efforts more closely on the outermost points. My range of vision covered the bottom sections of the room. I squatted down and duck-walked, examining the floor and walls, searching for what I needed, praying that God would grant my wish. I inspected the first two walls on the left, finding nothing. I tried not to let my faith wither. All I need is one frayed cord. God has to love me enough to give me that. I've gone through enough in my life, and it's about damn time something went my way. God knows the hell I've been through. He has to have a little compassion for a tortured soul. If this comes together, the nasty pig won't ever put his foul hands on me, near me again. While still in the squatted position, I came to the farthest corner of the third wall. I paid special attention to the double socket outlet. The upper cord belonged to my mother's curio cabinet. The lower one belonged to a lamp. It was 9 years old and still useful, so of course it hadn't been thrown out. The lamp was homely and looked like a yard sale reject, the designs worn away. The deceased lampshade had strips of fabric hanging off the edges. I leaned over the end table bearing the lamp and followed the cord with my fingers to the outlet. The cord was frayed and the wire exposed. It always sat on the same end of the same table. I felt a jolt of happiness. It was exactly what I needed. I wondered if my luck could really be that good, or if God had answered my prayers. God is good, I thought, as a sinister smile spread across my face. I pulled matches from my robe pocket and held them out in front of me. Smoking has its advantages, doesn't it? If I didn't smoke, I wouldn't have the matches available when I needed them. It was a sign. God wanted this for me. The flare that came when I struck the match was glorious. Time seemed to stand still as I listened one last time to assure myself no one got up, and then held the match to the exposed wire. I didn't touch the cord, but left it dangling. The rubber casing made a sizzling sound as it melted. The coating dripped on the carpet, melting the fibers, then smoldered and caught fire. I waved out the match, replacing the used one in the matchbook in my pocket. I didn't want any evidence pointing towards an unnatural cause by leaving the used match behind. It's the little things that could get you caught. The curtains were as flammable as the fluffy green carpet. The acrid smell of burning polyester hit my nostrils. To me, it smelled heavenly. I stared into the flames, mesmerized. I could see my dreams coming to fruition as more of the room caught. The curtains carried the fire to the couch, which quickly energized, spreading across the room and ceiling. Oh, how great it is to have so many old things. I backed out of the living room and into the hallway as the fire moved with furtive speed. As it burned, the carpet had a cherry red smoldering glow, turning to black and then ash. As I watched the blaze, I covered my nose and mouth with part of my robe to prevent too much smoke from entering my lungs. The smoke was thick in the living room, billowing out the doorway into the hallway, slithering across the ceiling, gobbling up all available oxygen. I could hear the room crackling as it crumbled to disappear into the heavy black smoke filling the bottom floor of the house. It almost sounded like laughter. I followed the flames as the fire traveled across the hall into my parents' bedroom. Both of my parents were still sleeping. The flames traveled across the carpet and made its way to the sheets on the bed. I followed my glorious path to freedom. Each second seemed to stretch as I reveled in the sight of my parents' bedroom becoming consumed with flames. I saw my mother stir and then rise. At first she seemed disoriented, but then came to her senses when she realized most of the room was on fire and filling with thick smoke. She rolled towards her husband. I could see my mother in vain, screaming to wake the monster, my so-called father. She shook him until her nightgown caught fire from the bedspread. My face was aglow with glee in the light of the flames as I watched my mother burn. She frantically beat at her nightgown, trying to put the fire out. When she noticed me in the doorway, she was desperate to reach out. As she took in the look of sheer joy on my face, She registered shocked horror. That's right, you're gonna die. Her screams didn't end until the movement of her body was no more. My father was so drunk he didn't awaken to my mother's attempts or her gurgling screams as she died. The fire continued along the bed until reaching his feet. His body snapped upright as he jerked his knees up to his stomach. The scream sounded like an animal in the middle of death throes. With his slow response time, it didn't take long for his protest to subside, but I stayed until the last crooning wail died away. The drunken bastard can burn for all I care, and the wench can go to hell with him, I called out, cackling along with the flames as I left the room. I hurried to the study to dial 911. I started breathing real fast so I would sound winded when they answered. Someone has to help me. My name is Eve Matthews. My house is on fire and my parents are trapped in their bedroom. Everything is on fire. I tried to get into their room, but there's too much smoke. I coughed for what seemed an eternity before catching my breath. Oh God, they're burning. Hurry up. They're on fire. Please help me. Send help. The address is 431 Amherst Road. My voice rose to levels of hysteria. You can't help your parents, honey. Get outside to the fresh air. I have the fire department on the way. You can't help anyone if you're dead. I could hear the operator typing as she spoke to me. I left the study, making my way to the back door. It was the closest. Don't worry, there's no hope of that. There is no hero here. Not for those low-life people anyway. Let them burn. But before I could get to the kitchen door, the smoke took over and I lost consciousness. Aren't you ready for chapter 2? Well, sorry, you're going to have to log in to the next video.